Search of the historical annals will reveal an assortment of men and women who were not up to the task of leadership. History it's replete of men and women who rose to the heights of power and authority, but were miserable failures. Over time, they proved to be weak, corrupt, morally deficient, self-centered narcissists. Many of them could be classified as wicked, even evil, some of them, and their personal deficiencies led to catastrophic results. History is full of these less than stellar leaders. Men like Pol Pot. Pot was a Cambodian politician and revolutionary who led the Khmer Rouge from 1963 to 1997. As the totalitarian director of his country, he forced city people to move out to the country to work in collective farms and forced labor camps. And it's been estimated that under his esteemed leadership, 25% of the Cambodian population died. 1 out of 4. Idi Amin was the president of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. Amin's rule was characterized by rampant human rights abuses, political oppression, ethnic persecution, nepotism, corruption, and killing. It's been estimated that 500,000 Ugandans were murdered at his dictate. Mao Zedong, who governed the People's Republic of China as the chairman of the Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1970. His restructuring of China led to a mass purging of perceived enemies of the state, class warfare, widespread starvation, and famine. It's been estimated that Mao's leadership in China led to the death of 70 million people. And then maybe the picture, the poster child of evil, would be Adolf Hitler. He led the Nazi Party as Chancellor of Germany from 1933 to his suicide in 1945. He's responsible for initiating World War II in the European theater, but he's more infamously known for the Holocaust. And while we remember the 6 million Jews that lost their lives under his tyrannical regime, the truth is he killed anyone who didn't measure up to his Aryan breeding, anybody that he considered a second-class citizen, Jews, liberals, Catholics, gypsies, homosexuals, blacks, political opponents, they all died at his hands. His atrocities in those death camps is mind-boggling. Over the course of 8,000 years of history, a lot of wicked, depraved leaders have come and gone. But if you are going to read any list of leaders, and if you're going to read the top 10 list of leaders, whoever they might be, one name that stands out and would have to be included on that list is Pontius Pilate. Pilate, it was, in my opinion, the most heinous leader of all time. He was installed as the Roman governor over the Roman province of Judah from 26 AD to 36 AD. And right up front, it needs to be said that he had received what probably should be termed as an impossible job. Trying to keep peace in Palestine was like trying to keep a mouse away from cheese. There was no way it was going to happen. The Jews were a nasty lot to govern. See, they believed that they were supposed to be the leaders of the world. They believed that the Messiah was coming. In fact, they had read Daniel 9. They had watched Daniel 9. They knew that they were living in the day. They were looking for the Messiah right now. And so as the Messiah was coming, it was their belief that he was going to come. He was going to take the throne of David. He was going to reestablish it. It was going to be in Jerusalem. And that all the nations of the earth were going to bow to Israel. So when the Romans took over Palestine, the Jews were not happy. And they were bound and determined to make it impossible for anybody who was going to try to lead the Jews. There was not a Jew. Pilate inherited the impossible task of trying to keep peace in this corner of the Roman Empire just about the time that Jesus' ministry began, 26 AD. Any reading of history will tell you he mostly failed. Now, honestly, he didn't help matters. The day he entered into Palestine, he offended the Jews by some of his actions. And if that wasn't enough, Pilate was good at stirring the pot, stirring the Jews up. I mean, just getting them all messed up, which only made things worse. The word on the street was that Pilate was one riot away from being dispatched. In other words, he was in hot water back in Rome. If one more riot came up, it was believed that Pilate would be sent back to Rome, called back to Rome, and then when he got there, it wouldn't be pleasant for him. It would probably mean he would die. So on this particular Friday morning, Pilate was walking on eggshells. The night before, Jesus had been arrested by the Jewish leadership. They had charged Jesus with blasphemy. And in their kangaroo court, which I might add was completely illegal according to Jewish law, the Jewish leaders and judges, the Jewish religious leaders were breaking their own law to hold the court where they condemned Jesus to blasphemy. The truth is they wanted him executed for it. The problem is that any capital crime that happened in the Roman Empire, including the province of Judah, needed to be run through Rome. Only Rome had the authority to execute anybody, and Rome could have cared less about a charge of blasphemy. About this guy who's claiming to be God, so what? Put him in a crazy house, but we're not going to execute him. This was going nowhere. And so the Jews were angered all the more. Bottom line was the Jewish leaders wanted Pilate to do their bidding, and they wanted them to execute Jesus, which meant they needed a charge like treason to get that to happen, which in Jesus' case was completely 100% not true. But what was true was that Pilate couldn't afford another uprising, another upheaval in Palestine. And that became the Jews' point of leverage. When you come into a courtroom, you want a judge who's interested in truth, interested in right, interested in justice. You want a judge who's going to uphold the law, only allow truthful testimony. The last thing you want is some guy with an agenda railroading the proceedings and taking them where they shouldn't go. Well, on this particular day, Jesus got the latter. Pilate wasn't interested in truth or justice. Pilate was interested in himself. I want to encourage you this afternoon to read through this section of Scripture. John chapter 18, starting in verse 28 down through 19, verse 16. And make sure you notice that this whole thing was really nothing but a farce. When the Jews showed up banging on Pilate's gate early in the morning, Pilate asked for the charge. You're bringing a guy for execution. What's the charge? What has he done? Their answer, John 18:30. They said, if he weren't a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you. Now, right off the bat, I want you to see this. They don't have a charge. If they would have had a charge, they would have made it. They're telling Pilate what we want you to do. If Pilate was a guy who was interested in truth and justice, he would have just shut the gate and sent them on their way home. But he didn't. And from here, things just went south. Knowing the mob was really just a bunch of hacks with nothing to truly say, Pilate encouraged them to take Jesus and handle the problem. Take him to your own court. Their response in verse 31 was, we have no right to execute him. Only you can do that. And so now they're displaying, they have an agenda. He's a criminal, well, so we say, and we have an agenda. We want him dead, and you need to do the deed. Again, Pilate should have thrown the whole thing out, but what was standing in front of him was a threat, not to Rome. This was a threat to Pilate. Give us what we want, or we will make sure to make your life miserable. Are you listening? Living in Jerusalem, Pilate had obviously heard some things about Jesus. And so Pilate invited Jesus back into his abode, and he wanted to question him. Pilate had probably heard some of his teachings or about his teachings. He maybe have heard about some of his miracles, his healings. Maybe he'd even heard about Lazarus. He had obviously heard about the title King of the Jews. So that is the place that Pilate began to focus attention. He said in 1833, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Pilate started here because if this is who Jesus was, if this is what he was claiming to be, this would have been seditious. It would have been treasonous if that's exactly who Jesus was, somebody coming in to take over. So if Pilate could discern that Jesus was a threat to Rome, then he could execute Jesus and have the whole affair taken care of by lunchtime, just gone on his merry way. So he asked, and Jesus responded in verse 34, is that your own idea, or did others talk to you about me? Now what Jesus is trying to do here is clarify. He's asking Pilate, are you curious about me? Are you seeking information about me? Are we having a theological discussion here? Or are we talking about a charge against me? Are you fishing for some kind of evidence that I might be guilty of? Pilate answered in verse 35, "Am I a Jew? It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" So now it's clear. This is not personal. Pilate's not seeking an audience with Jesus to be taught. Pilate's asking Jesus if he's a threat to Rome. So at the direction of the question confirmed, Jesus answered. Verse 36, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews, but now my kingdom is from another place." Jesus is telling Pilate, I'm no threat. I'm not a threat to you. I'm no threat to Rome. I've never been a threat to Rome. If anything, I've told people to support Rome. They're the governing authorities. To answer your question, here it is. Rome is safe. As soon as Pilate heard all this, he thought he was getting somewhere. So he made the declaration, "Then you are a king." And this is where Jesus laid the cards right on the table. In verse 37, Jesus answered, he said, "You are right in saying I'm a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Jesus was a king. Not by any human agency. His crown was a different sort of a crown. It wasn't fought over. It was never in jeopardy. It was an authoritative, eternal crown. He wore it by right because he's God. He's the King of kings. And it's here that Jesus laid down his purpose. I didn't come to earth with a political agenda. I didn't come here to do damage to Rome or cause anybody to have problems in the theoretical sense. I've came to bring people to the truth. Everybody on the side of truth is going to listen to me. This is what Jesus' words were to the disciples just a few hours earlier in the upper room. In John 14:6, when he said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." And that truth, Jesus said, will set people free. You want the truth, Pilate? Here it is. I'm the truth. I am the truth. And you need to bow to that reality. With those words hanging between them, Pilate snarled back, "What's truth?" What was the truth? Well, from a political standpoint, the truth was that Jesus was innocent, completely innocent. In fact, Pilate made that declaration right here. As soon as he asked Jesus that question, "What's truth?" which for him was a rhetorical question because Pilate wasn't concerned with truth, he then moved outside, back to all the religious leaders, to the mob. And he said in verse 38, "I find no basis for a charge against him." The accusation against Jesus were nothing but a charade. It was completely ridiculous. And Pilate said so. Jesus needed to be set free. That's the truth. But the point you need to see here is that Pilate wasn't interested in the truth. He was interested in saving his own neck. If Jesus were a threat, he would have done something. But he wasn't, so Pilate was on the verge of letting him go. And it's right here the crowd pulled their own threat card against Pilate. Jesus may be no threat to Rome, but we're here to threaten you. You let him go and we'll make your life miserable. So they cried out. John chapter 19, verse 12, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar." It's a direct threat. And Pilate was frightened. This really seriously had the potential of being the end of him. If the Jews revolted, he was likely dead, and that was when Pilate revealed his true allegiance. He was aligned with himself. He would do anything to save himself. He would bend things any way he needed to bend them to get what he wanted or what he needed. So here's what I need you to hear. Pilate was a relativist. He was a postmodern thinker. He only cared about what worked or what mattered to him. He'd already decided what the truth was. He'd already proclaimed it. I find no fault with him. He's innocent. But that was a truth that didn't help him in this present situation. So Pilate was willing to move around the truth. I'll do whatever I need to do to suit my own situation. So here's what he said. What is truth? What is truth? And for Pilate, here's what it was. Truth is whatever I need or what I want it to be. The result? An innocent man died. And Pilate didn't give one hoot about it. He had saved his own neck, and for Pilate, that was all that mattered. It raises up some interesting thoughts. They're thoughts we need to get settled into our minds, especially in the day and age we live in. Because the day and age that we live in, I think most of us would agree, to some extent or another, the world has gone completely stark raving mad. And part of that slide to craziness is based on this topic. Truth. When you're confused about truth, then you can be sure that things are going to get messed up, and they're going to get messed up in a hurry, and they're going to get messed up sometimes what looks beyond repair. So I want to take a few moments and share these thoughts with you. And let's begin with Pilate's age-old question. I want to start with a definition. And let's ask Pilate's question. What is truth? What is it? Now, in reality, this is one of the fundamental, foundational questions in life. Your definition of truth will set your foundation and then will put your worldview into motion. And your worldview is the framework of how you live, how you see life, how you operate. And that philosophical foundation is established on the topics that we've been laying out in this series. It begins with the question, is there a God? Is there a God? Now, the answer to that question is unequivocally yes. There is zero question about that. The universe, the earth, your body could not exist if there was not a God. The only explanation for the existence of anything that is life formed in this world is that there is a God. And from there, we move to week 2 to make this statement, that God is the authority. Because He is God, by His nature of who He is, by the fact that He's eternal, by the fact that He's not created, by the fact that He sits over all of this, that makes Him the authority. By right, God is the authority of all that is. Everything will bow to Him. And the next part of that foundation then is truth. What is truth? See, you have to define the boundaries of truth. Where does truth come from? How do I determine what is true? And here's the deal, and it's huge. If you are confused about truth, the foundation of your life begins to crumble. When truth is in question, everything comes apart, and it literally rips apart at the seams. So in our discussion concerning finding hope in a world gone mad, if the world has any hope of being healed, it demands that we understand the boundaries of truth and that we live therein, which leads to this first thought here, and it's part of a definition. And what I want to say to you is that historically, for most of world history, the definition of truth has remained constant. Seriously, if you're looking down through the ages, the definition of truth is something that hasn't changed. Interestingly, it's something that we're born with. You don't have to go very far looking for truth. You hear it coming out of the mouths of kids. Stealing is wrong. Some 2-year-old or 3-year-old, if another kid comes along and takes his toy, the kid will stomp his foot and maybe cry and say, mine, 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 I had it first. See, we know that stealing is wrong, murder is wrong, lying is wrong. Little kids who have never been taught these things understand them. It just comes out of them because in our hearts is placed truth. C.S. Lewis talks about this in his book, Mere Christianity. And he uses this as an argument for the existence of God. It's a theistic proof, he says. Where does our instinctive knowledge of right and wrong come from? It comes from the fact that there is a God. If there wasn't a God, if there wasn't absolute, there would be no right or wrong. But in our hearts, we all know that there are truths, that there are things that are right, that are things that are wrong. That proves that there is a God. Now, for millennium, people have believed that truth is universal. Truth is not a moving target. Truth is not something that changes. Truth is not one thing in one place and another thing in another place. I mean, it's not like, well, truth does not change. Truth is truth is truth. It's universal. If something is true, it's true for all people, in all places, at all times. We've believed this for millennium. And to help you understand what I'm saying here, let me just illustrate it with the law of gravity. When it comes to gravity, it doesn't matter if you lived 6,000 years ago. It doesn't matter if you lived 1,000 years ago. It doesn't matter if you live today. It doesn't matter if you live in Asia or Africa or North America. It doesn't matter if you speak Chinese or Swahili or English. It doesn't matter. When it comes to gravity, if you step off a 10-story building, you will fall and you will go splat. It is a truth. It works for all people, all places, all times, all people. Or how about mathematics? Here's a simple one. 2 plus 2 equals... 2 plus 2 equals? Oh, that's good to hear. I was getting scared there for a moment. And it doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter when you were born, where you were born, what historical era you live in. It doesn't matter what educational level you have. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. It is universal. I mean, the truth is, if you have an account that says something different than that, like 2 plus 2 equals 1 or 2 plus 2 equals 7, it's best not to say nice try. It's best to get another accountant because the IRS can count too, right? Truth has always been a standard. It is a foundational standard. It's a universal standard. It's something, it's true for all people in all times and all places. For thousands of years, this is how we define truth. It was absolute. Absolute. It does not change. But 60 years ago, things began to shift. And in that shift, we moved to be postmodern in our definition of truth. Throughout the history of the world, truth has been something you can know, you can be sure about, you can be confident in. But in postmodernism, truth becomes a shifting standard, which means truth is created by people at any given time to be what they want it to be. Let's flip the slide ahead. Truth is a shifting standard. Truth changes. And not from century to century or from place to place. The reality is truth can change minute by minute. It's constantly changing in today's world. In 2004, Barna, who runs surveys, he ran a survey and he found that 64% of adults and 83% of teens believe truth is always relative. Relative. It's not absolute, it's relative. It changes. It's relative to time and place. It's relative to your situation. It's relative to your desires and beliefs. It's relative to your feelings at any given moment. You could more probably truthfully say it like this: preferences equal truth. What we feel or what we think becomes our reality. It becomes our truth. Postmodern thinkers want to follow their senses, their feelings, their emotions. Have you run into any of this in your world? It leads us to build our values around ideas like this. Follow your heart. Be true to yourself. And really it boils down to this: I want to do what I want to do. And I don't want there to be any strings attached or laws attached or consequences attached to it. And in the end, you better not mess with how I feel, because what I want to do is what I want to do. And if you mess with me, listen, I'm going to mess with you. It is my truth. It's my truth. I can do whatever I want to do. The standard of truth has shifted. From being an absolute solid foundation to being whatever I feel in my heart, think in my head at any given moment. That's the truth. And in the end, the only thing this accomplishes is to completely destroy society. Why? Because people will gravitate to anyone who tells us that our thoughts and feelings are good and right. And we'll get rid of anybody who's telling us that what I feel or think is wrong. And that's where this new definition of tolerance comes into play. Tolerance used to be defined by saying, we live in a country where you're free to kind of choose how you want to think within the confines of law and order. You can't get out of that. But you have the freedom of religion, and you have the freedom of speech, and you can do all of that. Today, that's not how we define tolerance. Today, we define tolerance as being whatever I think or whatever I feel is not only right for me, but you have to applaud it. You have to say, oh, that's so good. I'm so glad for your truth. It's wonderful. And if you don't approve of my feelings as truth, you're wicked. You're evil. You're to be cast out. People who are postmodern in their thought absolutely 100% reject absolutes. There are no absolutes. Nothing is absolutely right. Nothing is absolutely wrong. Believing something is true only if they accept it as truth. People who are postmodern still hold beliefs. In fact, they may hold them passionately, but their opinions and their story cannot be challenged by you. You can't have a logical argument because at the end it's just, well, that's what I think. That's just what I feel. Facts don't matter. And in that way, everything becomes true. Now, how postmodern and relativism really work is they have done away with the authority. There is no absolute authority. The way that it works is the only authority out there is you. You get to choose what's right and wrong. You are the final arbiter of what is right for your life. You're the definition of what is right and wrong. Whatever is in your head is truth. Well, that's truth. And I'm telling you, it only creates trouble. And what I want to say to you is welcome to America. What is right? Whatever you want to be right. And when this philosophy is in full swing, everything becomes true. And that forces us to move to the lowest common denominator. The most debased, disgusting, perverted act becomes truth. It becomes moral. It becomes right. A thing to be loved, honored, a thing to be protected. And anybody who would stand against that thought is the enemy. I'm just telling you, friends, this has been a complete and total paradigm shift in our country. Truth used to be about raising the bar, a call to a higher standard, a call to righteous living, a call to godly living. Now truth encompasses every base thought and action. It's being played right out in front of us. It's being waved in our faces. And amazingly, way too many people in the United States have become numb to it. As evil increases, way too many of us are just kind of standing back, throwing up our hands and saying, well, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Last week, we watched in the message bumper, that video of Drag Queen Story Hour at the Brooklyn Public Library. Now, honestly, if you had shown that video like 30 years ago, people would have looked at it and would have been aghast. We would have been buying plane tickets, flying to Brooklyn, and we would have been, trying to figure out how to put an end to this right now. But here, what we're watching on the screens is parents bringing their little kids to this, and the parents are applauding it, and now the children have learned, well, that's what they do because this is good, and so I'm going to applaud it too. Nobody wants to say, no, that's wrong. What in the world has happened? 4 generations ago to our generation today, we are living in a different world, a world gone mad. Today, that kind of action, that kind of attitude, that kind of thought is completely 100% normal and right and good and to be applauded. What has happened to truth? Well, it raises this question: how do we get here? 70 years ago in the 1950s, things were different in the United States. God was foundational. Family and church, they were esteemed. And most everybody held to a biblical world view. Back in those days, most everybody in the United States held to the same basic belief. We called some things good, we called some things bad. Some things right, some things not right. Some things righteous and some things sinful. And our lists were similar. I mean, you could go kind of anywhere, and we had come to the same conclusions. And that's because we were all reading from the same book, the Bible. And we allowed that book to shape our thinking, to shape our thoughts, to shape our values. It was the foundation of truth. It's what steered us, guided us. We held it to have come from God. And because it came from God, it was authoritative. And if God is authoritative, and He is, then His Word is authoritative. It is, and then that means it's the truth. And then came the 1960s, and everything began to shift. There was a great movement to remove God from our society. In the early 60s, I was an elementary kid. I was a kindergartner in 1964. And I remember that when I was first in kindergarten in Southern California, by the way, Fullerton, California, on Monday morning, we would gather around the flagpole. We would say the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God. The principal would read a passage of Scripture. We would pray. We would sing. And then all of a sudden, all that was being taken away. Bible reading was removed from our schools. Prayer was removed from our schools. And then they began to be removed from the public sector as well. Decisions were made by the Supreme Court that called all of this separation right and good, because we don't want to force anybody that might have a contrary opinion into this idea of absolute truth in God. With God sufficiently removed from the schools and classrooms, it became a free-for-all to teach kids all kinds of things. Some of you grew up during this time. Some of you have read about it. Evolution became the new science. It was all an attempt to do away with the authority. We don't need God. God is dead. If there's no God, then you're free to do whatever you want to do. And that's when we started calling wrong right. We started handing out condoms to kids. We started saying that this is all good. We started actively promoting alternate lifestyles. Everything became right and acceptable, except for one thing. There was one thing that was not okay: the exclusive claim of truth, the exclusive claim of absolute truth, which is exactly what Christianity claims. Jesus in John 14:6 says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Jesus is saying, I'm exclusive. And I want you to know that in the Greek language, these definite articles that are underlined appear. Because if they hadn't been in the text, Jesus would have said, I am a way, I am a truth, I am a life, which is what our world wants us to believe today. There are many roads, there are many rights, there are many ways to live, and none of them are right and none of them are wrong. They're all just okay. It's all okay, but that's not what Jesus said. He said there is an exclusive truth, and I am it. Up to this point, we believe that Jesus was the authority on truth. Life happens in eternity in heaven. With our newfound wisdom, we set that all aside. We encourage people to do whatever they want. And in the process, Christians were labeled as intolerant. And according to the secular humanists, this was the world's greatest sin. Really the only sin. Which to me is so hypocritical, don't you think? If everybody is free to believe whatever they want and do whatever they want and act in however they want, then how could somebody who says, I want to believe in a God who's an absolute truth, be wrong? How can we throw something out? Isn't everything true? No, Christianity is the big threat. So kill it. Or get them to change their minds. Just get the church and all the believers in these, which we're watching denominations across America these days, start acting that all these other things that we used to call wrong are now just completely right and they're all okay. We've become numb. It's led to dire consequences. Since the 1950s, 4 generations have been raised outside of the influence of God and the church. There exists today in America not just a postmodern culture, we are a post-Christian culture. We are now 4 generations removed from the church, the Bible, and the influence of God. Church attendance is down, and people are upset, and people are throwing rocks at the church, and many Christians are diving for cover. We've done away with the constant, the pillar, the foundation, and all you have to do is look around to see that its effect is madness. As a result, our world has gone stark, raving bonkers. And it leads to one last thought I want to put in front of you, and that's that God has a simple solution to all of this. Is there hope for a world gone mad? The answer is yes. In Exodus 20, 3,500 years ago, God called Moses up onto Mount Horeb. There in the Sinai region, Mount Horeb, Moses made his way. The children of Israel had come out of Egypt a couple of months earlier. They had been delivered from their bondage in Egypt, and now they had moved south. God, instead of leading them north to the promised land, he had led them south to this place for this purpose, because God had some things to say. And when Moses was called up onto that mountain, God met with him and spoke with him, and he laid out the law, all 613 laws, the ordinances about worship, the commands for sacrifice when commandments are broken, feast days. God laid out an intricate set of expectations that governed the life of the Israelites. It was truth. Truth. Everything that God said was true. It was right. It was noble. It was good. Everything. And God's message in Exodus chapters 20 through 40 into the book of Numbers really honestly defined everything about living and how to do it successfully. And the whole message that God gave began with these words. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, he said, I am the Lord your God. I am the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God. Would you say that with me? I am the Lord your God. Let's say it again. I am the Lord your God. The words are important. Let me give you 6 reasons very quickly why these words are important. Number 1, because they firmly declare the existence of God. If there was any question that God exists, here they are. God speaking from the heavens. I am the Lord your God. The communication in Exodus 20 through 40 in the book of Numbers clearly gives proof. There's a God. The second thing that these words do is they create a line of authority. There is a God. He's real, He's present, He's active, He's Lord. The word simply means boss, master, the one in charge. You are not in charge, I am. I am the Lord, your God. He's the authority. The third thing they do is they establish truth. God said that He is the one who establishes, declares, and defines truth. The principles of the Ten Commandments are expected to be adhered to. In fact, God clearly says that obedience to these commands will bring blessing to our lives. Deuteronomy 28, you can read it. We're going to be there in about 7 or 8 weeks, but you can read it in advance. If you want to be blessed in life, if you want your life to be well, if you want to live well, these are the commandments to follow. The fourth thing that these words do is define our relationship. He is God, I am not. He is eternal, I am created. I'm the created one, He is the creator. And by rights of that fact alone, He is the Lord. The amazing thing here is that we are invited to know Him. God is calling us into relationship. That's the story of the Bible. In Genesis 2 and 3, the very beginning pages of the Bible, we see God in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, and they were there fellowshipping, communing together. Sin separated them. God did everything in His power to bridge that gap, and He did that through Jesus, who died and made a way. Jesus paid our debt. And where the Bible ends, Revelation 21, is where it began. Because we read in Revelation 21, now the throne of God is with man. He is our God, and He will wipe away our tears. This is heaven, where we come back into the presence of God. Full circle. God is about relationship. And He desires that relationship with you. But here's the deal. He is the Lord. He is the God. He's the authority. It's on His terms, not my terms. Which leads to the fifth thought, and that's the words are exclusive. There is one God. There is no other. God singled himself out. In fact, the first 4 commandments are all about this in Exodus 20, the first 4 of the 10. You shall have no other gods. You shall not even make an idol, an appearance of a god. Because there is one God. He is exclusive. Far from there being no truth or many avenues of truth, God is saying, I'm the truth. This is true. And one last thing I want you to see, friends. If you read the Hebrew text, you would notice that this is in the present tense. It's not past. God doesn't say, I was God. It's not in the future tense. I someday will be God. He said, no, I am. And the way that it's worded in the Hebrew means that it is like, I am and I continue to be. I am. That's why that name is so powerful. I am. He is God. And He's the truth. At all times, at all places, for all people, He's the Lord. And here's the deal. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. It's the truth. Philippians 2, talking about Jesus and what He set aside to come to earth to serve us by dying for our sins. Paul goes on to write that because of what He's done, He's been elevated back into the presence of God, and because He is God. And that at His name, at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is the Lord. That's going to be the final act before eternity is separated into 2 groups of people. Those going to heaven, those going to hell. Before everybody goes to that Christless, godless, eternal existence, they will turn to the throne, they will bow, and they will say, Jesus is Lord. There's going to be nobody on that day, standing up and saying, you're not real, I don't believe in you. No, it will be more than evident. And every knee will bow. God's simple answers to the challenge of life and the brokenness in our world is Him. God says, look to me. I am the Lord your God. There is no other. He's the way. He's the truth. He's the life. So in a world gone mad, is there any hope? The answer is yes. But if there's going to be hope, it's going to be because we come to our senses. And it's really simple. There is a God. And He's the authority. And He's the truth. And my greatest moment is when I bow to that truth. That's our hope. Would you bow your heads with me? And here's my question, friends. Do you believe it's true? Do you believe that there's a God? And if the answer to that question is yes, then you've got to believe by right of logic that He's Lord. And if He's Lord, He's divulged the truth. have you bowed to that one? Is your life enfolded in that one? Father, it's so easy to answer that question as yes. But we know, Lord, that obedience to your call is so much more than nodding our heads. Father, there's probably not a person in the presence of my voice this morning that doesn't have some area of their life that needs to be adjusted to the authority, to the truth. We're grateful, Father, that you are the constant, that you are the forever one, that we can put our lives into your hands and trust because your truth is absolute. And so, Father, this morning I pray for all of us that we will be people who are determined to do nothing but that, to honor you as Lord and bow to you as our God and as our Savior. And we lift it in the name of the one who makes it possible, Jesus. Amen. Would you stand with me? And let's respond by singing.
It's really weird being at that age when young people look at you and see you as an old man. It's interesting when you think about how you were grown up, how you had grown up, and pretty much everybody thought the same way that you do. And we as Christians, when you look next door to your neighbor, odds are there's a lot of commonalities that you have with your neighbor sitting here right now. When I think about, my wife and I have raised our kids. They're in their mid-20s now. I'm thinking about the grandkids. And maybe they'll ask for advice. Maybe they will want some counsel, my actual kids. But those grandkids, what will they be growing up in? I've seen so many changes. And I've seen these young kids that have so many emotional problems right now. And is there any one of us here that, after hearing what Derek preached today, doesn't just have some serious empathy for these young people that grew up in a home that does not have Jesus? Jesus said, and this is in Matthew 7:24, "Therefore, those who hear my words and put it to practice is like a man who built a house on a rock." These kids need that rock that is Jesus Christ. And I can just challenge every grandparent here that that's something that we need to be involved with. We need to give this younger generation something that they don't see much of in this world. Jesus is the answer. I know we can all agree to that. He died on that cross because the Lord had a plan for all of us to spend eternity with him. And we need to take those grandkids with us, and we need to take every one of those younger generation that we can get. Any influence that we have, we need to use it. Let's go to the Lord. Father, as we take these emblems of the blood that was spilled and the body that was broken, We hurt for this younger generation, Lord, and we pray that you would give us opportunities to witness your love and your light to them. And Father, as we just slow down for this moment, and we thank you for that amazing plan of your death on the cross, we just ask, Lord, that we would be someone that would just reach out to everyone with that light and that love that you've given to us. And we love you in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Friends, we're getting ready to leave and go out the doors. And as we go, we have just a couple of announcements to make. First of all, the students are meeting in here tonight. Grove students from 6 to 8. Have your junior, senior hires here. Kellen, the adult leaders, they'll be excited about having them here to lead and to guide. Fun, teaching. It's going to be a good night. A blood drive is happening tomorrow. It's happening right over here in the cafeteria. You come through the B entrance and back here. We do need to get you to sign up for that. The good news is everybody participating in the blood drive is going to receive a free ticket to the fair, and that's not so bad, right? And so you'd be blessed by that. To sign up, you need to get online and go to the Red Cross website. Bill Thomas is in the back. He would love to encourage you about how to do that if you need a little bit of direction or help, and he will point you in the right directions. Lots of things are going on at the church here in the fall as we were kicking off. There's a women's Bible study happening in the fireside room, 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Roberta Schreier is leading that. There's a discussion going on with some current events. Tom Schreier is leading that, and we'd love to have you here. There's no childcare for that, but we'd love to have you here for that. And then at, obviously 10:30 at worship. So get signed up for that. If you're not in the Bible study, we would encourage you to do that. Also, small groups are happening, and they've kicked off, and they're moving, and it's not too late to get started. There's some opportunities in the back. We really do want all of you in a small group. So get in one, and if there's questions, there'll be some people back there to help you and honor you with that. This coming Saturday, a week from yesterday, October 8th, we are having a work day. It's a work day that's happening here on our property. We really need kind of all hands on deck. We have a couple of really big projects that are going to be taken care of. Several years ago, we took care of all the drainage in the front, and we had some holes excavated, and we laid pipe, and we got it all out and we solved a whole bunch of problems. We're now doing that in the back. And so if you would drive around our building, Ron already has a whole bunch of pipe. It's already here. It's already ready to go. There's going to be an excavator here on this coming over the next couple of days. He's going to get trenches dug, and we're going to put gravel and do all of those things and get all that piping done so we can get all the water that's coming off the roof and coming off the back here out of here and get it all. Literally, it's going to go around the building to the ditch over here and then out to that retention ditch in the front. It may sound crazy. It's how it was designed. We're just going to be doing a better job of making it go that way. So we literally need hands on deck. Guys, we need you to be here from 9 o'clock to 4 on Saturday. If we have enough people to move ahead, we're also going to be refacing the pump house, and we also have some projects where we're doing some landscaping, doing some weeding, and doing some planting around the church, so we could use you. We need to know that you're coming because we're going to make sure that we have lunch prepared for you, and so it's going to be a great day of fellowship, a great day of fun, a great way to serve, a great way to help spruce up our building as winter is on its way, a good way to get rid of some water that's been a nemesis back here, and I will be grateful for that. The leaders will be grateful for that. So Brenda's in the back. She's at the table. We really do want you to stop. We really do want you to commit. We really do want you to be here. We're going to have a great time. I'll look forward to seeing you there. So that's that scoop. Hey, if you're a guest here today, welcome. We're glad you came. I'm going to be at the table in the very back. We have a gift for you. I'd love to meet you and greet you and learn your name. And as you're leaving today, if you have offering, there's an offering plate right at the door as you're leaving. There's also a trash can for communion things that are left over. And if you have a church pen, a Grove pen, and you don't want to take it with you, you can drop it in. We'll make sure they get sanitized and put back in the basket. Hey, stand up with me. Would you do that? And friends, as we're going here, we're going in the name of the one who is, not was or will be, the one who is. I am. I am the Lord your God. Would you say that with me? I am the Lord your God. And in that name, have a great week. God bless.